My name is Cody Kraus, and I'm a real estate broker owner that's obsessed with everything real estate. Investing, building, selling, developing, farming, you name it. I've been doing this since I was 18 years old, and I've learned a ton through trial and error, and I've met some of the coolest people ever. This is a show where I invite these people on to talk about their experiences and mine, plus everything else real estate. Let's go. All right, well, everyone, welcome back to the Everything Real Estate Show. Today, I have Gary Zalepa on the show, and Gary is the Senior Vice President of Network Development for Century 21 Canada. That's a bit of an intro for him that I'll give. But Gary, for those of you who don't know you, who is Gary Zalepa?
Yeah, thanks, Cody. Gary Zalepa is based in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Started in real estate when I was in my university days. I've had, three generations of Zalepas in the real estate business in Niagara, and that probably speaks to how I ended up being in front of you here today. I've sold real estate as an agent. I've practiced as a broker owner for a franchise, for Century 21 franchise, and now I've been involved with corporate real estate world, helping broker owners like yourself build their business. And despite all that, I get involved in my community. I think that's an important part of real estate anyways. And I've been involved with elected office, currently still am. And I also like to spend some time on a sailboat and make sure I have some personal time with that. So I guess in a nutshell, that summarizes myself. And I've got two boys and my wife, and we live in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Awesome. And you happen to be the Lord Mayor of Niagara-on-the-Lake also. Why Lord Mayor?
That's the crazy thing. I guess when you're in real estate and you put a lot of signs up in your neighborhood with your name on it over 25 years, people start to get to know you. And I had some really smart people come to me years ago and say, you should put your name on a ballot and run for council. And
Okay.
3 terms later, here I am as the mayor. So it's a privilege. It's a lot of fun. So.
And not a small undertaking, I would imagine, in addition to the busyness of the rest of life.
Lots of help, lots of support I've had, not only from my spouse and my family, but from colleagues and friends. And it's challenging at times, politics, and especially in today's world.
Yeah,
But
with social media, I can imagine.
juggling that with business is always interesting.
Oh, good. Cool. Well, let's dig into it. So you mentioned that you became a realtor university days. So you were, late teenager, early 20s probably, and you decided to get into sales after seeing 2 generations before you do that?
Yeah, exactly. I decided to go get my real estate license before I could I started the course legally before I could actually get my license.
Yep.
But I timed it well so that by the time I graduated, I was able to apply for a real estate license. And going through at university, I didn't spend a lot of time in real estate. But I started to do a little bit, I guess, from a part-time perspective while I was a student, full-time student, and that really gradually converted to finishing school and then kind of looking at real estate more serious. And I was always lucky, Cody. I had a great mentor in my dad, and kind of steering me in the right direction, and kind of learning, through him, things I should do and shouldn't do. As I think it's challenging in this business for real estate people to get on the right path. And he very early convinced me that I should get some proper coaching and business advice, which I took him up on many years ago. And I think it's the most important thing that's helped my career. And I would encourage, that's something that everybody should consider.
Definitely. You know what? We have a few parallels there. So I started my real estate license, hadn't yet finished high school, and I had to write a competency exam since I didn't have my, diploma yet from high school. And same thing. So I was mentored by my dad, but I also had other mentors in the business. And it was kind of funny because everybody said, well, your dad's in real estate, so you're going to do great. The only problem was he was practicing at the same time as me. So our friends and family, they'd be like, well, yeah, I know Cody's got a license, but John's been doing this for 15, 20 years. I'm going to use him. So we were almost competition.
Imagine, Cody, if your dad had the same name. So my dad was Gary Sr.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. But over time, as you have, you've earned people's trust, right?
Yep, big time. And I do think there's a lot of people that love to see that generational handoff, and they understand that yeah, you know what? You got a mentor who's in the business that cares about your well-being. It's not going to be a golden spoon that's handed to you. You're going to have to work for it. But
Yeah, that's
man,
for
it's
sure.
priceless to have a mentor. And just like you said, although I had a great mentor, my dad, obviously I sought out other mentors too, whether it was people in the business, you know, also working in the same company. I was lucky to have some guys like Tim Mercer as a mentor to me, but
Yeah.
also went outside of that and hired coaching, like you said, and I've had the same coach now for the better part of a decade, and it's been invaluable. So I think
Yeah, it
that's
really
great
is.
advice.
If you seek out leadership from around you, and I was fortunate enough to cross paths with some really visionary and hardworking people, and they were kind enough to spend time with me and give me some advice and guidance, um, and many not only in the real estate side on the as a sales representative and agent, but then later as a broker owner. Affiliating with Century 21 was probably one of the best things my dad ever did.
Yep.
It just connected us with a network that was very knowledgeable and willing to share. And uh, and then in the corporate side, I've been very fortunate to work with some really, I guess it would be influential leaders in Canada, and I've learned a lot from all of them as well. So
Yeah. Well, similarly, like it's important to seek out a coach and a mentor and things like that. Um, Benefits of association, whether it's a local, you know, independent brokerage that you think does a great job and represents the community well and the industry well, being part of a franchise network, whether they're, you know, provincial, national, global, there's definitely some huge benefits that can come with that too. And you know what, even the referral network too, right?
absolutely. Those were all really strong parts of my business. When you're early on, you're starting and you're just trying to, build your client base. Tapping into networks like that were really valuable. I know times have shifted a little bit, but in the '90s, I attended every conference I could. And therefore, I was able to really build a bit of a reputation, a positive reputation,
Yep.
and network in our brand, and that was always very valuable. We were able to build a referral reputation that when people thought of Niagara, they thought, "Oh, Gary and his dad," and we did well with that network in Century 21 as people thought to relocate to the Niagara region. And I think that's still valuable today to build those personal relationships with your colleagues who are referring, whether it's across the country or now it's across the world, right? And
Yep.
we're fortunate as that we're affiliated in over 84 countries, so lots of opportunities to build a network, right?
Great. So you had a good experience as a sales career as a young realtor, building your career after school, things like that. Why did you want to get into brokerage ownership, or what did that look like? Did you give up your sales job? Did you keep your
Yeah.
sales job?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So it was a little gradual through the beginning. So a little bit of both. So I think it's just the way I was wired was not to continue doing the same thing for my whole career. I think that's a bit of a generational change. I think the generations before me were very comfortable, kind of in a role, and then kind of going through that through their whole career. I think that with the change I was always used to. I got very comfortable and I thought pretty competent in sales and really enjoyed that with the client. But always as things progressed, I started looking at what else was there, and I started to really enjoy helping salespeople. In my time, it was with technology because we were starting to see technology come on the forefront. Agents were not using a lot of technology other than maybe an analog or a digital pager back
Yeah.
then. But then I was using a laptop. I was doing a presentation on that. I built a website which was at that time, people thought, well, what are you doing that for? But it started to pay off. And so I helped real estate people with that. And I found a lot of enjoyment in helping our agents in our office do that. And slowly, as I built, I guess, credibility by being able to do the listings and the sales, I was able to be that voice where I could give real estate people advice, and not only on the technology side, but competently on the sales side because I had actually gone and done it. And I think it's important. I think any leadership in real estate has to have a demonstrated ability to deliver on what you're coaching. Otherwise, I think that people question why would I listen to you if you haven't done that.
Yeah,
So
the theory
for me,
doesn't
I
mean as much
gradually
as
moved into that.
experience. That's for sure.
Correct. Yeah, and it was important, and so I became partners with my dad in our brokerage, and we're a small brokerage, Cody. So I had to trade in real estate and also help with the management and leadership of the office.
Yep.
Yeah, and did that for many years, and got me involved with organized real estate, which broadened I guess, my exposure to what was going on across Canada. And over time, I was recruited to go work corporately and manage a larger real estate brokerage, which allowed my dad to look at retirement and us to sell our real estate brokerage. And I went into fully 100% into brokerage operation and management at that point.
Cool. So I get the question a lot just because I've, for the last just over a year now, I haven't been selling anymore. And I have a lot of my clients like, hey, do you miss what you did? Because we know you did that for over
Yeah.
a decade. And I said, absolutely, I do. I love, seeing families start the search. Oftentimes the first time you meet them, they don't have kids or they're not married yet. Then all of a sudden they're married. Then the next time they call you, they got a couple kids and just the progression. And then you get to meet their parents when they're looking at the houses. And just from, first meeting to all of a sudden you show up on closing day to congratulate them and the whole family's there. They're excited. They're moving in. They're stressed and everything like that too. But just to help them along there, it's a thrill, honestly. I really enjoy it. And so I am missing that part of it right now. But like you said, you're still able to help the end user now by, I guess, helping advise the people that are now affecting the end user so that when you were a broker owner, you're building into your realtors to make sure that they're all giving a great experience to their clientele, which are ultimately, I guess, representative of yours if you're the broker owner. Now you're a step further, you're in the corporate side of it and you're going, okay, well, when I was a small broker owner in Niagara-on-the-Lake, I was able to influence my, maybe it was 15, 30, 50 realtors that were at my office. Maybe it was 80. I'm not sure how big the office was. But now all of a sudden you get involved with a franchise system that's national wide, Canada wide. Well, now all of a sudden the systems that we've learned within our little brokerage that worked from being involved in operations, we can bring that to a national perspective. But also I'm sure you're taking feedback from maybe some of the big brokerages in Toronto and Vancouver, but also some of the small guys in rural Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Alberta too, right?
Absolutely, and real estate is very specific, location specific in anything, right? And so I always say I vicariously live through my franchise owners that I get to help.
Yep.
And when I was a broker owner, I vicariously lived through my sales representatives. And you're right, the thrill of helping the client, building their trust and becoming their trusted advisor over their lifespan and maybe their children and their parents, is a really attractive and desirable feeling, right?
Yep.
And when you become a leader in your brokerage or you become a leader in your brand, you get to do the same thing. And I'll tell you, when I started with Century 21 Canada and this kind of role in a franchisor role, I began selling franchises to real estate broker owners. And I've seen those broker owners start from their beginnings, and they're kind of like my sales reps originally, and they started from, ground zero, and they
Yep.
built a business. And some now I've had these relationships for almost up to 10 years and some longer. And that's really rewarding. And it's the same feeling I got when I helped my clients buy and sell their real estate. And I think that's the consistent benefit of the real estate business. The some of the dynamics can change, but at the end of the day, it's you're helping people build wealth either through their real estate and find their home, their place that they bring their family, or you help business people build their businesses to help people do that. And so I find that really rewarding. And I think that's what keeps me coming back. And it also, I think, makes every day a little different,
Yep.
which is important to me because, as I said earlier, if things are too similar, I can lose some interest and look for some. I want to look for something else to do, right? And I think that's all part of challenging yourself and making sure that you're having some fun when you do it.
Well, and talk about changes. I mean, you got different brokerage models now coming online, whether it's the virtual platforms or the old school brick and mortar. On top of that, you got everything that's going on with the commission lawsuits in the States. You got TRESA coming into effect in Ontario. In BC, you're dealing with totally opposite changes. Like in the States, they're saying that the best representation to the end user is the lowest cost. And in BC, they're taking the total opposite stance, which is no, 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 no. It's dedicated representation. There will be no multiple representation. Each party needs to have their own representative. So, I mean, being based out of Ontario, you're having to pay attention to what's going on south of the Canadian border, but also what's happening east and west of us too, right?
Yeah, there's always lots of information coming flying in, and I think it's important to keep your head in all that, but it's also you got to watch not to get distracted too much. You know, at the end of the day, I primarily believe the consumer will dictate where the real estate business has to go.
Yep.
The regulators will be slow catching up always because government is that's just the way government is. But as business owners, we need to be really cognizant of where the consumer wants to be, and if we continue to place ourselves in their best needs, the consumer's best needs, I think we're always going to be okay. Consumers always will look for various services at various costs, depending on who they are. And I think it's important from a service provider as a real estate professional to really be clear on what service you provide, you know, and believe in that, and then establish how you're going to deliver that, and then that comes along with, you know, what is the fee service for that, and what is the service level. And when I think you confidently project what that is, I think a lot of the other stuff is noise, and it doesn't matter as long as you're taking care of your clients and you're clearly establishing what role you play for them in the marketplace.
I think once you can establish, like you said, that confidence, but also demonstrate that your self-interest is not above the clients, that's when all of a sudden it's going to be a healthy marriage in that relationship. In your last point there, or second last point, you'd mentioned, you know, you're kind of living vicariously through your, I guess, franchise owners now that you're helping out. So part of your job is helping realtors build their business within the franchise network that you're a part of. You mentioned before the call that you have a few things that you'd probably like to speak to. Maybe it's tips for realtors in 2025, separating your business into two sectors. Do you want to maybe dig into some of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, happy to. I think there's opportunity for real estate people to really look at their business. We've gone through a time of change where we've had markets that were fairly easy to transact in, and then last year that tightened up.
Yeah.
And so what I'm seeing and what I believe is that realtors who really fine tune their craft and get focused on what their strategy is are going to win. And I think they currently are winning. And I think that it's going to continue to separate the really successful real estate professional from the not so successful one. I kind of look at it two ways. I think there's two pieces of your business as a real estate practitioner that you should really pay attention to. And one is what I kind of call building. It's called like it's brand or general awareness of your business, and you need to be deploying strategies that create that awareness of your brand in your community that you want to transact. And I'll get into kind of what that could look like as specific strategies. But on a high level, that's client focused. It's sending value items to a client base. Sometimes you hear the term sphere of influence. Your contacts that you have through your community. You need to be communicating with them and providing valuable information. And I'll get to what that can look like. But the key is that you're really establishing yourself as a real estate professional in your community to elevate yourself from your competition. And the second part that I think is really important of your business as a real estate professional is to have strategies and actions that build your candidate pipeline. And that's more of immediate. That's your prospecting.
So it's almost like working on the business and then working in the business, right? You can't
Exactly.
separate them from
And whether you're a broker owner or you're a salesperson, this applies to both. And I think that real estate people need to get really focused on continuing to build their skill set, on their candidate prospecting activities, so that your dialogues, and I don't mean dialogues in a way that's not natural. I mean being really confident to have a normal conversation with people on a regular basis in your pipeline. You need to be reaching out every day to a certain number of people, and real estate people need to determine what that number is for their business. And if you haven't figured that out, and it's, today's, January 9th, get that locked down on your calendar. And so that would be a really key piece of advice.
Yeah,
For
January
real.
is a great month to be really, I guess, niching down and figuring out what your ideal client avatar is, who you plan on working with. Do you enjoy working with buyers? Do you prefer working with sellers? Do you like both? Do you like new development? Do you like the investment side of it, commercial, residential? There's so many different ways you can specialize, but then obviously there's niches within that too, and you don't want to ignore any segment. But obviously you want to work on what's going to keep you most interested and most focused too.
Yeah, and what really excites you, right, as a real estate professional, if you have something you really like, lock onto that and do that, because that's what you'll actually end up doing. I know some salespeople say, "Well, I don't like to, do a certain activity," and I say, "Well, try leaning into that a little bit and see if you can change that. And if you can't, then really focus on what you are prepared to do, and what you like doing, and make sure that that still delivers the candidate pipeline that you need, right?
Yeah.
And I think continually to build on your skills. One of them, for example, I think is the ability to deliver a amazing listing presentation.
Yep.
That
So
is a
the
key,
basics, right?
yeah, back to basics. And I think those are really important. Being able to understand what's the strategy of your listing appointment, and know step by step what your process is when you're in that listing appointment, and what your ultimate goal is at the end, and asking for the business, right? Those are things that I think a lot of real estate professionals maybe didn't learn properly, because the market dynamics were different. But in this market, you can't afford to get a meeting with somebody and not have an effective listing appointment process.
Yeah. So I started in real estate back in 2011, and in Windsor specifically, our it wasn't an easy time because we're so much affected by Detroit, and so we had the 2008 2009 financial crisis in the states. As you know, General Motors, Chrysler, both declared bankruptcy. They're still around, so that's okay. But it really affected the automotive industry, especially in Windsor, because we're right there south of Detroit. Most people don't know that we're south, but we are south of Detroit.
Yep,
And
of course.
so that really affected us heavily for a long time. And I look back now, and it was a hard time to learn in real estate, but I'm grateful that I did start during that hard time, because
Sure.
I really had to sharpen my pencil on the basics for the next 4 years. A lot of my discussions with clients ended up in tears at the table when they learned that their home was worth, potentially less than what they had paid for it 2, 3, 5, 10 years prior. And I'm not saying I'm thankful that they, didn't necessarily do so well. Their cost of ownership was also very low during that period too. So if you averaged it out, what it cost to own versus rent, it was still much cheaper to own.
Right.
But it helped me have all those hard conversations. And then coming into, a very, very prosperous time like 2016 through 2021, I think a lot of us got a little bit lazy with some of those basics that we learned during those more difficult times. So then when the interest rates really started coming up in the second half of 22 and throughout 2023, we had to lean right back into those basics. And I talked to a lot of realtors that got licensed in 2020, 2021, 2022, and they didn't have the opportunity to really learn a lot of those tough things. They got a phone call, they put a sign in the ground, they booked photos, and the house sold off and over asking. And we're not in that scenario right now where the days on market is building. The average sale price is down significantly from at least spring of 2022 in our area. We're similar to 2021 levels right now. So we're okay on that front. But I also wonder too, like our real estate board went from around 900 members to about 1,600. I think of the book by Gary Keller called Shift, which is the natural progress of a real estate market as there's ups and downs because of uptick and then drop off in sales, whether it's because of interest rates or employers or economic factors, whatever it might be. And I believe that we're kind of in that stage right now where the market has ticked down because interest rates went up. Oddly, our prices have stayed uh, still almost ahead of pre-COVID levels if you compare 2024 to 2020, maybe not to the later half of 21 and beginning of 22. But typically what follows next is, I guess, race to the bottom on pricing as far as commission goes or commission rates, and then mass exodus of agents. Do you think that that's something that could happen in Ontario or will happen, or even
Yeah, it's
Canada?
a good question. As far as I think that we're already seeing some signs of some sort of exodus. I don't know if we're going to see mass, and the reason why I don't think we're going to see a mass exodus is because I think there are opportunities or there are business models that allow real estate people who are not transacting much business to move their business into where they sort of kind of go into a stall or a neutral mode. And what I mean is the cost structure for that's quite low. So in Ontario, you can kind of keep a real estate license, but not really be active. I don't think that's a good thing, but the regulator has allowed that to happen.
Sure.
And I'm not going to change the regulator anytime soon. So I think from a real estate brokerage perspective, when we determine what kind of real estate brokerage we want to be, you determine what kind of real estate salespeople you want to have on your team. And for me, I like the idea of producers and professionals and people who service people really well. So
Definitely.
those are the kind of people that I want to affiliate with and attract to my business. So and those others can go wherever they want to go. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're actually seeing movement for real estate people looking to adjust their cost structure. But unfortunately, that leads to, you know, committing yourself to lower production standards. Because I think that's where you end up when you don't invest the time and the professional development into your business. And
And
I think that's where we are because we saw in Ontario the province the RICO introduced some insurance guidelines and some the real estate boards introduced some added cost structure to being part of organized real estate. That hasn't seemed to push too many people out, Cody. So I don't think we're going to see that because of the combinations of different cost operations of brokerages. But I definitely believe I know where I want to be in the business. And I think we just want to attract like-minded people to our business and grow our business. And
so might
yeah,
not see the mass exodus, but it sounds like
sure.
you're confident we're definitely going to see I guess probably a greater gap between the true professionals that are very, very productive and the people that happen to have a license but maybe aren't practicing as a
I think
professional or doing it full time.
I think exactly that's exactly. I think we've already been seeing that, and that's why I think it's so important as a real estate professional to position yourself competently as that key trusted advisor,
Yeah.
and be able to deliver on that, not only just say it, right?
Well, and I guess naturally what you kind of said there is because there is low cost models, the people that aren't as productive are naturally going to be drawn towards that. And when you're a low cost model, you're not able to offer the same value that, and it's not necessarily versus a high cost model, but you're looking at a discount model versus a brokerage that wants to empower their professionals. So naturally, if you're
Yeah.
the discount model, you're not going to be able to offer the same services that your brokerage that really wants to feed the top producers and the high performers and the true professionals.
Mhm.
So the education component's not going to be there, not as many support staff to help your clients through the process, not as much mentorship to help your realtors continue to build and work on their business, not just in it, kind of like you mentioned earlier. So do you think naturally there's going to be a divide in brokerages where there's going to be, maybe our discounters over here that are, lack of better words, warehousing licenses, and then there's going to be your top performers over on this side. Do you think like the general public is going to realize that, oh yeah, these guys sell a lot of homes and these guys, have a lot of dusty licenses kind of just sitting there?
Yeah, so I think so. Two things. I think the business has the demarcation's it's already happening and has happened where there are firms that their per person productivity is lower than some of their competitors. But I still think there's still some confusion in the consumer where I'm not sure the consumer sees the differences in everything yet, because there are some, low cost providers that don't deliver on the same service level, but offer a place for real estate people to keep their license, where they still have some producers that are, there may be a few less, but they're doing quite a bit of business. So I think that confuses the consumer to some degree, but I still think it's a space that is going to continue to evolve, where there's going to be more business done by a smaller segment of the licensed agents, and that we're seeing. And I think when we see sometimes real estate people maybe would switch a company to go look at a lower cost. But once they get there, we do see some of the producers come back to their brand or go back to a more service orientated brand. And so that gets me back to what I said, is when you're building your business and looking at building brand generation for your business model, and then you're also looking at prospecting in your candidate pool, the brokerages that help real estate people do that more are going to continue to have salespeople join their teams. And I think when you look at the different brokerage models, the ones who are delivering on the ability to help their agents the most, I think they're gonna win long term on this.
And so if I was a
And
realtor and I was looking objectively at maybe brokerages in my area, if I looked at agent count, it might look like some of the lower cost models have the lion's share of the market because they have more licenses there. Whereas I guess more of a service-based brokerage that's giving more service to their agents. If I looked at actual listings and solds and unit turnover, even though they have less realtors, it's going to look like they have the lion's share of the market. So I guess it depends from the consumer. Am I going to be impressed with a realtor that comes from a brokerage that has a lot of people at the brokerage? Or am I going to be more impressed by a brokerage that has a lot of sales and listings?
And that's where it goes back to, I think, from the real estate professional has to make sure that they tell that story, and to why it's important for the consumer to use services from, say, your brokerage versus the competitor, because of all those reasons why, so that they understand that aligning their business needs, or getting their service or their real estate service from somebody who's more competent at transacting more and having more success is better than going to get representation from perhaps an office that is not delivering on that. And I think that's part of how real estate people need to make sure we're getting those messages across in our listing presentations and our discussions with consumers. And I think if from a broker perspective, those are the conversations I would want to have with potential agents who I might be interested in bringing over to my office, to show how by them affiliating with my brokerage, they can deliver better on those things and secure more business and take care of their clients better.
Yeah, and so if you're a realtor if you're a broker trying to attract more realtors, I think per person productivity is probably one of the greatest measures that you could show them for the effectiveness of your brand. But you kind of going back to working on your business, so building your brand, things like that. Of course, we don't want to spend our listing presentation bashing the other companies or anything like that. What we
No,
really
not
need
at
to
all.
do is come up with a true value of why use us. And it's not because the other guys aren't good, it's because of what we do. So yeah, it's good to know how you differ from that other brokerage, but you don't want to highlight their negatives. You want to really focus and nail down on your positives and the value that you bring, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as a broker, if you can continue to do that, to reaching out to salespeople and finding those salespeople that kind of align with your value, your culture, and then showing the services you offer, you continually want to bring them into your circle and join your brokerage, and help the clients out. This business has always been attracted by cost, and a lot of salespeople just look at cost, and I think it's a mistake, and I think it's actually it can be fatal, a mistake, if I'm comparing services, whether I'm a consumer comparing services from agent A or agent B, or if I'm an agent comparing broker services. If I'm just looking at the listed costs, I think that's a real scary way to evaluate service levels. And I think you really need to look at at the end of the day, how can my business evolve and grow here? Or how can my business be transacted here in a more effective way with this professional versus that professional? And then I think then the cost becomes less relevant because it actually the net benefit could be greater.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us as real estate professionals to show whether it's our clients transacting or real estate professionals as a broker owner to show them that they might be leaving something on the table.
Yeah, no, I
And
love
in
that.
fact,
So there's a real estate broker, owner, coach from Detroit named Jeff Glover, and he's got great market share in Detroit. And his famous line is, "What's your net?" So in other
internet.
words, right, it's not about your gross; it's about your net. So okay, if I make, for example, $100,000 working at company A, and my costs are 40, my net's 60 before tax. Now I might go to company B and only gross 90, but if my expenses there are lower, say 20,000, well then my net's actually greater. I'm at 70 instead of 60, and it could be the other way around too, where
Yeah.
one company could allow me to grow my income a lot more, but a lot of the expenses are on me,
Yeah,
and
and
vice
when you're in
versa.
the first scenario, you're actually racing to the bottom, right? Because when you're still cutting expenses, you're not in growth mode,
Yeah,
and you're not thinking of a growth mode, which is back to getting to your pipeline and contacting your clients. That's growth mode. And when you can get real estate people thinking along those lines, they can their net. There's no, there's a opportunity to really build on their net
yeah.
in a way that they can't unlock that opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, I think like when you're looking at a budget as a business owner, some expenses are purely expenses, some are investments.
Mhm.
But if you look at every expense item on that side of your balance sheet as purely an expense and you're just worried about cutting them, yeah, you might improve your net this year, but you're not building into your pipeline next year, right? And so, for example, our podcast here that we do, I could try and produce it on my own. I don't think it would be that great. So hiring the professionals that I do, shout out to Mel and Jer to produce this for me. I understand that it's a greater investment up front, but I think that I'm going to get more audience. I think that I'm going to retain more audience because it's professionally done. It's done in a great manner. It's put out regularly. We have a social media plan that goes along with it. So yes, that's an expense line in my budget. However, I view that expense as not just an expense, but also an investment because I see it building into my future business. So if I can pull out kind of two themes from our conversation here, it's back to the basics. Make sure that you're building your pipeline, making sure that you're, putting in some work now so you have some closings, so you have some business coming in 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now. But also don't forget to work on your business instead of just in it. So making sure that you're focusing on your branding, making sure that you're looking at some of your expense line items as investments. Should I build some of those and actually increase my spending in those areas to build my future business, to set apart my branding from the rest of the industry in the area? Maybe new technology that I want to invest in. Should I build another website, lead generation, capture, all that kind of stuff? It's not always just an expense item. So look at some of those as investment lines, and obviously within reason, because you could go ahead and call everything an investment and spend all your money too and have nothing left over at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think there's some really simple things that salespeople can do to kind of do that without really making a big investment up front. From a branding and building your business awareness of your clients, re-engage with your book of business. Like a lot of real estate people are not really good at maintaining contact, right?
Yeah.
So to start with, I always say to real estate people, if I'm coaching them, I'll say, hey, get your phone out, get your contact base. When's the last time you talked to these people? And simply start a plan that allows you to call, 5 or 6 of those every day until you get through your book. And that reestablishes contact. So that's a really easy win, right? And so I'd say easy win there. And then, also communicating about what's going on in the market today. What you're doing is a perfect example, Cody. You're talking and putting information out to get people thinking about the real estate business and opportunities. And agents need to do the same thing with their clients, reaching out and discussing, hey, this is happening in the marketplace. This is an opportunity for you to think about this and that. And that just establishes the real estate professional as that expert. And so I think it's important. Those are, things that you could do right away in your business that really not going to cost you anything, but it's work and you need to do it. And the other thing is really just on the lead generation side is just, making sure you're connecting with people through real estate activities, right? You're doing, maybe it's your open houses, being more effective in generating a contact list from those, and then following up with those people you meet, and also with any opportunities that you're connecting with people anywhere else in your community, and reaching out with a card, nice to see you, that kind of thing. All simple ways to get started. To get 2025 to really be a good, strong year for you, right?
Yeah, handwritten notes go a long ways these days. Not too many people get those
Huge,
anymore.
huge. And everybody gets an email and nobody reads it. But if I get a nice card in the mail, and I got one from you, Cody, and here it
Oh,
is
it's
on my
funny.
shelf here, and right, look at that.
That's hilarious.
And
Well, I'm glad you kept it.
yeah,
So that speaks to that, I guess.
yeah, it
When
is.
we're young in our career, we often have a lot of time and we don't have a lot of money. And then as our career starts to build, we start reaching kind of a middle point where we go, okay, we were investing a lot of time into our contacting efforts, our marketing efforts, things like that. Maybe we were doing a lot of open houses, going to community events, all that kind of stuff. And then as your business starts to build, you're a lot busier with showings and listing appointments and servicing your business and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of have to transition to that. Okay, as far as resources go, I'm having less time and more money, or am I having more money and less time? And typically you spend whichever you have more of. So if you have more time, you should be spending the time. And once you have a lot of money and no time, well, then you can start putting the money to work for you so that you can leverage your time a little bit better too, right?
Yeah, and you can look at starting to add, whether it's building a team, right, or maybe it's adding an assistant and leveraging, like you said, your time or your money. And that's the next step. Like that's when you first got to get things going, though. A lot of real estate people I find prematurely jump to next step when they haven't really secured the business yet. They haven't locked in that pipeline and really built their transaction level up. But when they've done that, I think then it's time to look at how do you add support into your business, right?
Yeah. Well, I think let's take it another gear here, unless you have any
Sure.
more tips for realtors in this market or in 2025.
Yeah, I think really just the key is what I already said is be in touch with your contacts, the people you know, and the people that that trust you. Because if you're not, somebody else will be. Because it's a very competitive business and a lot of hardworking people in it. Just keep in touch with your people and have a conscious strategy and plan to make sure you're touching those people on a regular basis through personal contact, through phone messaging, handwritten cards, holiday greeting. All those things are really important, and bringing value to them in the marketplace. What's going on in the market? What's it mean? What's it mean for the U.S. president-elect to be talking about tariffs, and that could impact your market massively. So I think those are things that it's time for us to not get out in a sensational way, but be out there, be providing information so that your clients know that you're a source of it, and that they might pick up the phone and chat with you about that more readily. So that I think is those are the key things from a real estate position, and
Okay.
don't get distracted by the next shiny object. Uh,
So this has been a lot of advice for real estate professionals. There's definitely some nuggets in here for business owners in general, for our audience that might not be active in real estate sales. Why don't we shift gears a little bit?
sure.
One topic I like to ask our guests about, I don't always get the opportunity to, but it's how has owning real estate benefited you and your family? Like obviously
Yeah.
we believe in what we sell. I like the idea of generational wealth. You got a family. How has owning real estate over decades benefited you and your family?
Yeah, no, it's great. I was really lucky when I was really young. My dad said, "You got to buy some real estate." I was 19 years old. So I bought my first income property then, and he showed me how to do that. And
Yeah.
so then being practically able to do that, I learned how to leverage and add more rental properties. And I've always stayed in residential space. That's my comfort zone. Some folks are comfortable in other places, with uh, commercial or industrial or plazas. That's not wasn't my strong suit. So residential was my comfort zone. So what's that meant for me? Well, it's really meant for my family. I think in an ability to be self-sufficient. And we're really lucky in that regard because I got into the real estate market, which operates much like a escalator, right? It continues to bump along, and sometimes it has moments where it goes down a little bit. But when you're invested in residential real estate, it doesn't really matter what the market does, to be honest with you, because people need a place to live, and residential real estate is purely shelter
Yeah.
and a home. And so, whether the market is up or down, people still need to occupy that space, and whether they pay rent to be there, which is part of what you're doing as a landlord. And so for me, that's a long play. So it didn't matter, that in certain periods of the last 30 years, those value of those assets were maybe a little lower than they were. It didn't really matter. But Cody, it really allowed us to uh, send our kids to school, um, plan for future, and in a way that as an independent business owner, I didn't work for a corporation that had,
Pension.
pensions and
Yeah.
things like that. And so that became, investment in those assets became important. And I was comfortable with real estate. Like some people invest more in the stock market. And for me, that was another comfort space. I didn't know, I'm not going to say I don't have investments. I do have investments there, but I'm more comfortable in the real estate space and understanding what that means and how the market's impacted and how to acquire more and how to leverage. And whereas the stock market, I like to let experts guide me there. I don't want to be, I'm not self-directed anywhere there. But I think investing early for anybody would be really key. The problem is today, for young people especially, is that entry point to the market is more challenging than ever. And it's not the carrying costs that are the problem. That's the down payment stroke, right? That's a huge issue right now. I think policymakers need to address that. When I was young in the 90s, policymakers did address that with an ability for to allow real estate purchasers to buy property with different requirements for down payment and some creative ways to do that. I think policymakers need to think of that today to help some buyers that can afford to be in the market but just can't make the first step. And I think that's something that's missing right now in Canada's housing strategies. We need to figure out how we help the qualified buyer get that down payment dealt with to get into the market. And then that'll take care of itself as it goes.
Yeah. I don't want to make excuses for people and say that a first-time home buyer can't get into the market because they can. They got to
they can.
definitely work harder now than they used to, and you're going to have to make sacrifices and delay gratification. You might have to get a little bit more creative, whether it's buying with a partner or, buying a home where you can finish a basement suite, get some income out of it. I would say the governments have allowed for that a little bit because they're a lot more friendly to ADUs and fourplexes on residential lots and some of that stuff that's coming into effect. I'll come right back to that in 1 second. So if I can pull how owning real estate has benefited your family, the one thing is stability. And if I can comment on that, I think a lot of people go, okay, well, what's the cost of ownership monthly versus cost of rent monthly? And right now, if you have a 6% loan and it's, an 80-20 loan to value, as the landlord, you're going to be paying more per month to own that property than the tenant's going to be owning it. Long term, it's typically the other way around. It's usually similar on not necessarily the other way around, because obviously the maintenance falls into your lap as the homeowner and things like that. So usually the actual cost is similar on a monthly basis when you average it out. However, stability is a really key one there, because if my landlord decides he wants to sell my home and I'm not in a term lease, I'm month to month, I'm at the mercy of my landlord if the new buyer of the home ends up wanting to occupy it as a primary residence. So the monthly cost might be similar. Maybe it's even a little bit higher to own, but the stability it can give a family is huge. So I love that you touched on that. Maybe I'm overstepping a little bit of a boundary here because you are in municipal politics. I actually had an email this morning from an independent reporter basically that's asking a bunch of questions just about this, which is what should policymakers be doing to help, the millennial or the younger home buyer get into the market? And my answer to them was, I think they need to get out of the way, not necessarily put more policy in place, but they need to get policy out of the way. So land transfer tax should be decreased, and that might come across as inflationary initially. But other things like the City of Windsor just put out an article yesterday. Well, the Windsor Star was quoting a discussion that the municipality, City of Windsor, is talking about right now, which is actually increasing development costs substantially on a single family. And I'm going, are you not paying attention to what's happening in the rest of Ontario and Canada? Like, you got the city of Vaughan, they had crazy, crazy high developments. They're actually talking about reducing theirs substantially because they know there's not enough single family homes being built. So what can we do at a municipal level? We know that the province is shoving, higher density down our throat. They're shoving ADUs. They're really encouraging more stuff to be done, but their policy doesn't necessarily agree with the independent municipalities and the bylaws that they already have in place. So what can municipalities actually do to play ball with what the province is legislating to help this? And I know you kind of touched on maybe we could put some policy in place to help that. And I think, as much as I may not agree with our current federal government, they actually did do some beneficial changes last month in December, which was increasing the amortization out to 30 years on insured mortgages, and also increasing the insured mortgage total amount for not just first-time home buyers, but also buyers of new homes. I do think that was beneficial. Is it going to help everybody? No, not by any means, but it helps a little bit. Maybe you can speak to the municipality side of it, and if you can't talk about that, sorry I went there, but...
No, you totally can. In fact, I talk publicly about it quite a bit. It's important for municipalities to hit their growth targets. And to do that, municipalities have to be approving construction and development of a variety of unit styles. So unfortunately, in the past, we've had too many single-family homes built. And that creates higher development charges because it creates a higher cost to deliver services per unit, right? So, at least in the way I see things in municipal world is we need to continue to approve more variety of housing style. That's more units on smaller spaces. And when you do that and you're able to hit the municipality's targets for density, that should neutralize the need for the municipality to increase their development charges, because the development charges are there for a reason, and that's to pay to put the services in the ground to connect the pipes to make this whole thing work. A big stress in Canada has been historically other levels of government, include like the federal government and the provincial government. They actually participated quite dramatically in the funding of the services that are cutting in the ground today that service municipalities. In fact, 30 years ago, those higher level government funded almost 60% of the infrastructure cost to deliver services to houses. Today, the federal and the provincial government contribute less than 9%.
So it went from 60 all the way dialed back to 9.
Look at that. Wow. And that's where there's a massive pressure on a municipality to put those services in the ground. Who pays for it? And so some municipalities fall back to increasing development charges. I think you have to fall back on following the provincial guidelines for density targets and make sure you're approving more variety of housing styles in your community. And in my community, our council has been really working at doing that. We're approving subdivisions that are smaller lots, bigger footprints, and therefore more units per hectare or acre than we're used to in the past. By delivering on that, we'll be able to manage a stability in the development charge space, which is basically then helping maintain that attainability or affordability to start with. And I think so. For me, that's the key: making sure that you're not in municipality is not developing lower density than it should be. And the province sets these guidelines. These are set by the Minister of Housing. They're incorporated in municipal official plans. And those are the targets that municipalities need to hit. It can be challenging for councils to do that because sometimes existing neighborhoods don't like that, right, Cody?
Yep. Yeah.
And
I
there can
like
be a lot of pushback from that. But so that's how I see it. I think that municipalities need to continue to approve greater variety of housing styles, and that means, like I said, more units per hectare. So that could be in the form of apartment style buildings. It can be more townhouse style or stacked towns. And semi and link houses, right? All those allow us to put more units in there and have more family space because I think that families and young people still want to have a little piece of dirt, right? And a little yard and a place to have their own. And I think that's important. And so I think that's what municipalities need to do.
I'm
Hope that
glad
answers your
I'm glad
question.
you finished that statement with that part because I was going to push back a little bit and say, okay, well, right now it's clearly a buyer's market for condominiums in Toronto, and most of the homes coming in the pipeline aren't even units you can own. They're built for purpose rentals. And I look at even we're small town Ontario. I totally agree with what you said, which is we've just been building 60-foot lots, and these neighborhoods have covenants for minimum 2,000 square foot homes, and that was fine when our cost per square foot was $200, but now it's
Yeah.
$400. So
Yeah.
it went from building $400,000 and $500,000 homes in new neighborhoods to nothing under 900. But there hasn't been a whole lot of single family development or even semis, and from what I'm seeing here in Windsor, Essex over the last 2 years, because the cost of interest went up like crazy. We were at a point through COVID where all of a sudden resale had caught up and almost surpassed the cost of new construction for single family homes. And then all of a sudden builders were like, wow, okay, resale just took off. We can raise our prices on new construction. And it's not that they were making, money hand over fist, because the trades caught on to that and the materials had increased in price through that also. But now if we look at the last 2 years, what's been built, mostly built for purpose rentals. And I think of, the massive level of immigration that we've had. Everybody's coming to Canada for that American dream, which is, a little family and a house with a, picket fence and whatever. But if we're only building built for purpose rentals, a lot of people are coming over here and they're going, okay, well, great. Now what?
Yeah.
I have a
A lot
kid,
happens
maybe
in real
two,
estate.
but I'm in a rental apartment. It's a nice apartment. Sure, it's brand new, but my kid can't run around in the yard. I got to go down an elevator just to bring the groceries up. Like, not really ideal. So I think, like you said, there's got to be a happy medium where we don't just want to build apartments. We don't just want to build high-rise condos, and we can't just build single-family homes on 70-foot lots because we're going to eat up all of the dirt, take away from our agricultural production and all that kind of stuff. People get tired of me saying this because I've been saying it a lot over the last year, and even speaking to local politicians too, is I think that they need to reward developers that are bringing forward proposed developments with lot frontages smaller than 40 feet and almost no restrictive covenants. In our area, a lot of the neighborhoods that are still here and that are being built, they were proposed 3 to 10 years ago. They all have minimum 2,000 square foot ranches or 3,000 square foot 2 stories. Must have a 2-car garage, must have solid surface exteriors, so no vinyl siding. We can only have stone, brick, or stucco. And
Wow.
that doesn't allow for housing affordability at all. But if we allowed people to build 1,000 square foot homes and vinyl siding, and if they didn't have to have a full basement, if they could have just a crawl space or be on a slab, or if they didn't have to have a 2-car garage, what if they had a single or no garage? Like, if we just built what people could actually afford, things would be great. But we have these covenants that are restricting that right now, and I think we need to figure out a way for provinces and municipalities to encourage developers to bring forward these neighborhoods with smaller frontages. We don't just have to build condos. Like I said, I don't think that's going to fix our problem. Families still do want dirt. The condos coming online and the built for purpose rentals, ideal for the aging generation. The boomers are finally getting around to going, it's a lot of maintenance to stay in this 3,000 square foot house now that all my kids have moved out. It's a lot of grass to cut. I'd rather be at the golf course or in Florida. So if we can get them into the condos and apartments, I think they're actually going to really enjoy their quality of life. And I've seen that quite a bit being involved in a few condo projects. But we still need to have that affordable single family or semi-detached home. And I think Toronto's telling that story right now because the prices of condos are much lower right now than what they have been years prior. But the semi-detached, the townhomes, and the single-family homes in Toronto are still going strong, and I don't want to base the whole province off of what's just happening in Toronto, but I'm starting to see that here too, where rents haven't increased over the last 2 years in Windsor-Essex from what I'm seeing. But single family and semi-detached homes are holding strong. Maybe they're not increasing like crazy, but they're holding their weight.
Yeah, there's no doubt there's much more stability in the value of real estate in the single family detached category. So I agree with that. And, the purpose-built rental focus is, a result of bad policy in the past, right? You had policy in this province that, basically locked down and restricted rent increases, right? And that basically chased people out of wanting to develop purpose-built rental for 30 years.
Yeah.
And now there's a climate that allows that to happen. So you do have a lot of builders going into that purpose-built rental. And it is a segment of the housing continuum that's important because
Definitely.
I think everybody needs every part of it needs to be a little more healthier. Right now, unfortunately, in Canada, and I think in Ontario specifically too, there's parts of the continuum that are very unhealthy, like as far as not enough supply available, and that's causing it's dysfunction. So the real estate consumer can't move gradually through this continuum where they get their first rental. Maybe they buy a condo to get their foot in the door of equity. Next thing they do, they're buying a townhouse, or maybe it's a stacked townhouse or a semi-detached home, and then they're building equity, and then they're buying a detached home. That's a continuum that's worked for generations in this country.
The property
and
ladder. Yeah.
Right now, it's not functioning right.
Okay. Well, that was a lot. We're coming on to an hour here, so I think that's probably a good way to start wrapping it up.
Sure. Yeah.
So just to cover, I guess, recap a few things. So Gary, you started in real estate sales at a very young age. You finished school, you went into sales, and then eventually into brokerage ownership, and now you're actually involved at a corporate level with a large real estate franchise in Canada, Century 21 Canada. You gave a lot of tips for realtors and real estate professionals in 2025, things they can do, specifically building your pipeline, working on the basics, but don't forget to brand yourself and set yourself apart too. We talked about different brokerage structures a little bit. We just touched briefly on that, and kind of naturally realtors that don't produce are going to be drawn to one, and realtors that do produce are going to be drawn to the other. And you're going to see that divide grow from maybe 30% of the realtors do 70% of the business, maybe to 80-20 or 90-10.
I think we're already seeing that, yeah.
Yeah. Then we talked about how owning real estate has benefited you and your family, and the theme that really came through on that was stability, and I think that's a great message. And then we talked a little bit about municipal, provincial, federal politics and home ownership and some of the barriers that are there, and maybe some suggestions as to how we can address those and fix them a little bit. And I don't think we solved all the world's problems, but
I don't think we will. But
I think it was
one thing real estate people should consider once they get their business going really well and they're successful, they should run for local office. Real estate people are excellent around municipal council tables. They're deal makers, they're collaborators, and they're good at listening to people. And so I'd encourage people to think about that.
Yeah, and I think government in general, and it could be a body that's real estate specific, whether it's your board or your provincial association or your federal association. It could be your actual municipality politically, or your province, or heck, run for Canada politics, run for the feds.
Somebody has to.
Yeah, someone's got to do it. And if you think you got a good idea and other people agree with you, then hey, maybe you'll be there. So
democracy is still the greatest system we have.
Yep. No, I love all that. And anyways, thank you so much, Gary, for joining me for this podcast. I hope and trust
I really enjoyed it, Cody. It's been great chatting with you, and I hope people find it valuable.
Good. Well, thank you so much. I think that's a good spot to end it for today. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Gary Zalepa, thanks so much, Gary.
No, it's my pleasure. It's been great being here. Thanks, Cody.
Yeah. Bye for now.
I look forward to seeing you at the end of the month. I'm looking forward to coming up, being in Windsor and celebrating with you.
Well, excited to have you. Thanks so much.
Yeah. We'll talk soon. You have a great day. Eh?
You too. Bye for now.
Yeah. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the show, folks. Please keep in mind that this show is not offering legal, financial, or accounting advice, but rather opinions and experiences in the world of real estate from the host and the guests. If you're enjoying the show, please rate, review, and share with your friends and colleagues. And if you think that there's someone that needs to be on this show, please feel free to connect them with me. Or if there's a topic that should be discussed, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much, and bye for now.